First of all, may I ask you, Mr. Zhang, here in the Beijing studio, how much, as far as you know, has been achieved so far for this quote-unquote the 7th round, because this is really the vice ministerial level participating, is supposed to, in a way, lead to certain fruitful discussions at least?
Firstly, I'd like to say I'm very happy to see there is obvious new progress for CJK FTA negotiation. You know that this negotiation started in 2012, and now it lasts for several years. But you can find that 7 rounds negotiation has been conducted. But I think that there are still tough mission ahead. We need to making efforts continually.
What is China's concern?
I think that from China's perspective, now we are very positive to promote, bilateral free trade agreement, trilateral, multilateral, because today China has already become the 2nd biggest economy in the world. Meanwhile, the biggest exporter in the world. That means promote trade and investment liberalization and facilitation. That will benefit for China's development.
China could benefit, but what is China's concern? Why this deal cannot be reached?
I think that China, actually, we are making efforts to promote CJK FTA.
I see. All right, let's go to you, Professor Watanabe. If China is trying to make an effort to promote this trilateral free trade agreement, what about Japan's role? Many say Japan has a lot of concern about its agricultural sector. What exactly is preventing Japan from playing an ever more active role in reaching a deal?
Well, as you know, Japan and China are economically very closely linked, and a lot of Japanese investment going to China. And if you look at China's export to the world market, I think many Japanese companies are involved. So many parts and components being exported from Japan to be imported into China and adding value, and then they would be exported from China to the rest of the world. So in this way, China and Japan are really, it's a very well, interpenetrated. So I think it is more than natural to have kind of institutional framework such as free trade agreement in order to further foster that kind of value chain development.
Well, so this makes sense, but the thing is,
JCK,
this makes sense. We all know this makes sense. That's why the ministers are gathering together to talk about it. The thing is, it has not reached a deal after 7th rounds, at least for now. So what is concerning Japan? Many say agricultural sector. What do you say, sir?
Well, you see, Japan is now transforming its agriculture. Mr. Abe's third arrow, the very important element is restructuring our agriculture. So Mr. Abe finally touches upon the reform of agricultural cooperatives. So that means that Japan is now progressively moving forward for the opening up of Japanese agricultural market.
All right.
So agriculture is no longer the concern. I think that what is important is the 3 governments, the respective government should have kind of political will to promote this integration, economic integration or market integration through freer trade.
Okay, let's go to Professor Choi Chun-hom, who is joining us through the phone. Professor, what do you make of the difficulties that South Korea is having right now in reaching any deal with the other 2 countries, China and Japan, for this trilateral agreement? What's on the top of your mind?
Well, first of all, I think that there is no particular difficulties between China and Korea, but the difficulties are coming from the Korea and Japan. So far, there is no particular interest from South Korea to get, to prompt the FTA agreement, to be concluded. So, domestically speaking, in South Korea, not many industrial or any bureaucracies do not want to have a repeat FTA from Japan, with Japan.
Okay.
And still there is obstructing factors. The one is the different position of on the level of market opening, and another one is different position on the way of liberalization of the service sector. I think these two kind of fields have to go to discuss more fully.
Interesting said. But the thing is, Mr. Zhang, when it comes to opening the market, when it comes to liberalizing the market, this has always been the focus of any kind of trade negotiation, isn't it? The very thing that's unique to this trilateral discussion is there is a very much lack of political will and also political trust among the three countries, particularly China toward Japan and also South Korea toward Japan as well. Under the current political circumstances, given the history factor, given the recent discussions about Japan's role in Asia, militarily, for example, is any trade deal possible?
Yeah, definitely. From my
Definitely
point,
yes or definitely no?
Yes, actually, any free trade agreement is not only a pure economic agreement, but also a political event. That means the political, relationship as well as atmosphere will seriously impact on the progress of
Absolutely.
free trade agreement. Meanwhile, I like to add one sentence that is in China, that a lot of enterprises and industrial sectors, they want to improve their high, medium, and high-end product and market share. On this aspect, they are not willing, to promote, trilateral free trade agreement because Japan and South Korea, they are good at, medium and high-end, products. From this point of view, for Chinese side, we have to convince those entrepreneurs. That means, that we have to look at CJK FTA, on a high, on a very broad, perspective. That means in order three economies can work together and we can improve our comprehensive competitiveness in global market, and then all of economies will benefit.
Well, the thing you're talking about exactly is you have to persuade your own constituencies why this is important, and they have to agree with that. But when there's a political difficulties, that's very hard to be achieved. Let me go to you, Professor Watanabe. The United States and Japan have been in very close talk about TPP. Some regarding it as a competing factor against the RCEP. Others say this is not necessarily competing against one another. The latter is very much involved China. The former, of course, TPP does not have China's participation. The question is, when Japan is putting so much efforts and interest into TPP, is Japan still going to make enormous amount, as it should, in trilateral trade discussions such as that among China, Japan, and South Korea?
Well, thank you very much for this very interesting question. For Japan, it's not a question either or. It's a question of both. We need TPP on one hand, but to the same degree, we need RCEP of East Asia, and also the core of East Asia, RCEP is JCK trilateral FTA. So it's not either or, but we need both. And if you look at the behavior of Japanese companies, our investment going into China, that to produce the goods in China or elsewhere in East Asia, and those things are exported to the rest of the world, like American market, EU market. So I think Japan is not looking at TPP, but also we give importance, equal importance to the development of JCK, trilateral FTA, as well as regional comprehensive economic partnership in East Asia.
Is that China's observation? Briefly.
I think that actually Japan has to making efforts to do a few different free trade agreements, not only TPP, China, CJK, FTA, but also RCEP, as well as Japan, EU. From this point of view, you will find that Japan is facing with tough mission. But I like to say that from my personal view, I think that TPP, Japan has already take TPP as a priority compared with CJK. But on the other hand, we also notice that TPP now is facing with trade promotion authority issues in the United States recently. That means TPP is facing with uncertainty in the future. But also, I think that CJK in this region also should be promoted simultaneously.
I see. I see your point. But let me go to you, our South Korean professor, Professor Choi Chun-hum. Many say, Professor, that South Korea is very much interested in a bilateral trade discussion with China, which is currently underway. So where would South Korea put this trilateral thing on the other hand? And how much effort, given the political climate also in your country, is this trilateral possibility ever possible in the near future, Professor?
As you said, now the South Korea and China's the bilateral free trade agreement is going very smoothly, very smooth, like political atmosphere between the two countries. So, but I would not sense that the bilateral relationship, the FTA between the two countries, China and Korea, will not promote or facilitate the trilateral FTA because of political distrust between China and Japan, and China and South Korea and Japan. So it takes a long time to go.
It does take a long time, but the question is, China, South Korea, Japan together, 20% of the world's GDP, 70% of this region's, in fact, output. This is an amazing number. So let me give this final question to you, Mr. Zhang, here in the Beijing studio. What can be done? I mean, given there's a political situation that we all understand, but economically and trade-wise, these three countries need one another to make it bigger even. So what can be done? What can be realistically done, particularly now?
You're right. Actually, CJK, three countries, actually are most important economies in Asia.
Absolutely.
And then that without CJK FTA, I think that it would be very difficult to imagine RCEP and free trade agreement of Asia Pacific in the future. From this point of view, my point is China-Korea FTA will be a very critical leverage to promote CJK FTA.
I see.
Yeah, because Japan would not. Japan will try to avoid trade diversion and investment diversion effect.
Wow, this is a very interesting game that we are talking about when it comes to trade negotiations. So much factors there. Zhang Jianping in Beijing, Yorizumi Watanabe in Japan, and also South Korea Professor Choi Chun-hum. Thank you so much. Thank you.